All right, One Soccer Direct is back. We are finally here again into our regularly scheduled programming following the end of the World Cup. Mackenzie Barwell, Jordan Wilson, and Gareth Wheeler with you. Jordan, you've got the vintage Wilson jersey in the background. How are we feeling, guys, post-World Cup?
How humble.
Great. They say, the kit was there for me, the long sleeve. I'm at the CPL headquarters.
Take advantage, baby.
Nice. People were talking about a World Cup hangover. I'm enjoying the calm.
Honestly?
There was a lot of games, 104 to be exact. So.
It was a gauntlet. It literally was a gauntlet for sure.
We'll get into all of it today. We'll start with some Canada soccer news, get into the Canadian Premier League, and then talk a very important Toronto FC signing. But first, as I said, Canada soccer, they recently announced that the Canadian men's national team will play Chile on September 26th, followed by Peru in Montreal. The first game takes place in Toronto. Wheels, how are you feeling? What are your initial thoughts on them getting back into action this fall?
Well, it's a quick turnaround, and it's going to be a little bit different this time around with their condensing and putting together the September and October windows together. So there's not two international window disruptions as the club season's about to kick off. Peru and Chile, two sides that didn't make the World Cup, but for this window, I think it's more about Canada. And let's see what kind of reception, what kind of attendance there are in both Montreal and Toronto for the national team getting back in action. This window is typically difficult. Kids are back to school. The fall season's upon us. So it's been a little bit more of a difficult draw getting people out, being enthusiastic. So we'll see where people stand after this World Cup. Like Canada isn't like following a club team when they come around. You want to see what new players might be able to come in, what the team has in store. The opponents are okay. They'll have their own following, but I think this is more about Canada than anything else. A little bit disappointing that there doesn't seem to be any more games this window because the opportunity opens up for teams to play up to 4 games in that window. 4 games might have been a little bit ambitious. 3 games felt about right. I think probably they prioritize weekend fixtures in order to encourage more people to get out rather than a weeknight fixture, which again have been a little bit more problematic. But you would have loved to have seen them play 3 games this upcoming window. So it's good that they're at home, allows more Canadian fans to get out and see the team play, and let's see what kind of reception they get.
I'm curious about that, Wheels, like the response and the reception, because I think this World Cup, outside of obviously going farther than Canada's ever gone at the World Cup, they were fan favorites, right? Like when you talk to people that maybe didn't know about this team or the players intimately 2 months ago, now there's Promise David chats, now there's Saliba chats. People are like on wave with like Kone and certain players. Obviously, we know that he's injured, but just there's players that you like, and they want to see those players in action again. And the fact that you're going to be at BMO on the 26th, and then you're going to be in Montreal on the 3rd as well. It's just one of those things where let's see if that wave continues. Because you mentioned it on the show For the Win, Wheels. It's just like, okay, you had the start, you had the World Cup, you got the fever, but let's hope that doesn't just blow away. Let's hope that continues. You show some support. Because look, I know 4 years right now seems like a long way away, and it is, right? A lot can happen in 4 years. But you also have to put down the framework, right? You also have to keep that momentum going and building for Nations League, for other tournaments, maybe even a Copa. But like this is the time now to get behind the team. So I like the 2 matches where they are, the fact that they're on the weekend, the fact that they're in 2 cities that have a good reception. People show out. Like Montreal before the World Cup, I understand it was a World Cup, but electric place, atmosphere. I was so envious that I wasn't there. So I'm hoping for the best this time around. And everyone knows what BMO Field has to offer with this men's national team. It's always tearing the roof off.
So 2 games are currently scheduled. Technically 4 are possible in this window. We have to talk about Alphonso Davies. As you said, though, Jordan, I think there's a little bit more variation in the conversation around the team, which is nice to see. But a lot of eyes, of course, are still on the team's captain. He only featured for 15 minutes in this World Cup. So there's a good chance by this fall window, he'll have played that amount of time in the span of about 2 years or so. Jordan, I'll come back to you on this one. How crucial do you think this window will be for Alphonso Davies to reintegrate himself not only into the team, but realistically into the fans in this country and their hearts?
Yeah, I think this next window, and honestly, this next little bit for Alphonso Davies, specifically for Canada, is crucial. Because a lot is made out, which I don't believe is true, is that like Alphonso Davies only cares about his contract, his money, and Bayern Munich. But that's a narrative around it because of the 15 minutes, because, okay, he's going to be ready, but not ready. And then when it was time for him to play and he actually played 15 minutes, then the match after, that was the biggest one. He wasn't available in their feature, right? it breaks my heart a little bit because that is going to be the rhetoric right now. The best player that Canada has ever had wasn't available for Canada when Canada needed him. That's what it's going to be, right? So even though you look at this window wheels of September, you're like, okay, it's a long way away from matches that really matter. But for Alphonso Davies, people want to see him wear the armband. People want to see what he does on highlight reels and how you've seen him in Champions League finals. They want to see him doing that in a AD 19 Canada kit, no matter who you play. And the fact that this World Cup, there's so many feel-good stories, but that was one that kind of had everyone sighing and huffing and puffing. I just hope that he can like rework that narrative a bit. But I can already see, Wheels, when we're going to talk about it, I'm sure you'll get into it, but it's just about his health. That is the overarching thing. A guy who is rarely healthy and hasn't been healthy for the past 18 months. Is this a window in the beginning of a season for 16 days for him to come over to Canada and play these games based on the history and how things have been with him? So I want to see him. I want him to change that rhetoric. I want him to flip that energy and be a guy that people are like, he cares and he wants to be there for the national team. But on the contrary, when I look at the history of him recently, that seems like a window that maybe he might not even be involved in. But I just hope that's not the case. I want to see him. I think it's imperative for his legacy for him to be there. And we just hope in September that he is.
I'd be surprised if Davies is part of the Canada squad for this upcoming window, to be honest with you. There's very little to suggest that he will be. Clearly, he is proceeding with a great deal of caution. And we understand why. Like, he's documented it. 3 injuries back to back to back coming off the ACL has clearly rattled him. He's clearly not there from a physical perspective. He doesn't trust his body, but it's mental as much as anything. He's entering a critical campaign with Bayern Munich, not only a club with incredibly high expectations for themselves and for their players, but then positional battles as well. And with his future very much on the line, with Champions League games upcoming, fast and furious, a lot of big games for club competition. I just think he's going to focus on himself at this time. And his club form. I would just be really surprised if he's going to come over to Canada to play 2 games and have 16 days just to kind of be around the national team. He was just with them training throughout this World Cup process as well. I just don't think he will be there. And I think you can make the argument he won't be the only one that misses out. If any players, Jonathan David's front and foremost right now in terms of what his future looks like, any player that's making a big move just in terms of changing clubs, moving city, they're probably going to look after themselves right now. And Canada won't be the only team that's dealing with that. I think Davies has now become a player that you are going to look at when he's included in Canada at being a bonus for the time being. I don't think that there can be expectations around him. And I feel bad for the player because clearly he was not in a position to go and do his thing. But the communications around his availability was what was most problematic. I think that if Canada Soccer and the people around Alphonso were just more forthright in terms of his availability, the decoy stuff didn't sit well. The will he, won't he has put him in a vulnerable position just in terms of public perception of what's going on around him. Clearly he's not ready. Clearly he's not healthy. I think that if a little bit of more honesty was used in the approach to the player, like I was advocating from the outset, then we wouldn't be dealing with issues like this. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's in his best interest, to be honest with you, to come play 2 friendlies in the 16-day window. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me.
Yeah, no, totally fair. Jordan, I'll come to you on this just quickly. If it's not now, and of course he's proceeding with caution in this scenario, maybe similar to some other star players on this team, when can we expect to see these guys and Alphonso?
Yeah, no, that's what's interesting. Wheels brings up a point. What stuck out to me is like with other countries, right? But with all due respect, if other countries are taking off some of their big dogs, they have other players to kind of supplant that and go and perform. Like a window without a Jonathan David, let's say, and Alphonso Davies, you're almost wondering what's going on, right? You need your best players and you need guys to get into rhythm. But when I think about your question about like August and the window and players maybe stepping up and who might need to go and do that, the 2 names that stick out to me is Nathan Saliba and you're looking at Promise David. Nathan Saliba being 22 and Promise David literally being vertical. His 6'5" frame was vertical and like floating when he scored that goal. Those are two guys for me that I'm like, this window you're gonna see them ball out, but I expect in January maybe for them to make a move if they're healthy and if they're playing regular minutes. This World Cup at Saliba being 22 and Promise David being 25, that is a ripe age for them to make a move and to create havoc over Europe. And I think they'll do that.
What do you think, Bill? Who are you looking out for at the club level?
Well, before we get into who I'll be looking out for, I mean, just when will we see Davies next? I think that is a relevant question to ask because I think it's still very much up in the air. November will be quarterfinals of Nations League where you're not going to be playing one of the big dogs in the region. Is it worthwhile bringing him back in November? Probably not. Maybe as you go a little bit deeper. I honestly think it would probably be in the best interest for Davies and Canada, to be honest with you, if we don't see Alphonso Davies back with the Canadian men's national team to sometime in 2027. That's not because we don't want to see him. I'm just being realistic here. But from a Canada perspective, this whole idea that he's captain, sure, he could be captain of Canada when he's here and present, but he hasn't been present and available to play for so long that other players have taken on that mantle. I think it's time that Marsh declares co-captaincy involving Davies, whether it's David, Eustachio, whoever, just to take a little bit of pressure on the off the player in the situation. And I would love to hear Jesse Marsh come out and say, like, look, we have been doing well bringing players through. It's going to be a process here over the next 2 years, whether it's Copa America, Nations League, Gold Cup, and we're going to take it easy. And in the meantime, we're going to rely on other players to fill the gaps that Alphonso will leave. What's important for Alphonso is to get regular club football and to make sure he's available for us when we need him the most. We don't need him the most right now for the remainder of 2026. At least we shouldn't. So I would love to see some clarity and a plan in place in order for him to return to play next season where he can hit the ground running and actually be impactful instead of dealing with the situation of will he or won't he. That's what I want to see because now there's a window here. There's time to bring other players through. Then we can address and deal with everything else. But right now, let's forget about Alphonso. Alphonso needs to focus on his club football. He needs to focus on himself and not be drawn into the pressures that come along with playing for Canada.
Last one before we move on. If this is the situation and we do wait, let's say, till 2027 to see him both so that he can recover from this injury and fully recover by that, I mean, and potentially wait for a higher stakes window when it really matters he comes back, how can we expect the supporters in Canada to really rally around this team and be committed and passionate about them when they don't see maybe the players they are most looking forward to seeing?
Because this is a national team. It's not club football. This is the thing. Like it cracks me up when I see, you know, the Canadian men's national team, compared to like the Toronto Blue Jays or the Montreal Canadiens or the Vancouver. They're completely different entities. The national team, no player has a divine right. They're not contractually obligated to play for the national team. And I think when it comes to playing in Copa Americas, World Cups, Gold Cups, these tournaments where you're playing for something matter much more than playing friendlies and getting reps. Why and how Canadians should be invested? Because this is a program that represents our country, that it represents opportunity to a number of different players to prove themselves, to step up, and to show that they're part of the big picture when it comes to playing and representing this country and us taking this team to another level. Like, look, I feel like we just are scratching the surface here for what the national team is and what it can be. Finishing, what they say, 14th, reaching the round of 16 at a World Cup, it's great. But how did this team play over the course of the World Cup? They played okay. Like, let's be real here. Canada were delivered the easiest schedule of games imaginable. And come the next World Cup in 2030, the schedule, because Canada won't be in Pot A, will inevitably be more difficult. Even if it's a 64-team World Cup, I wager that they'll have a much more difficult draw than this time around. But Canada, right now, They don't need just Davies fit. They need Moise Bombito on two legs. They need Luc de Fougerolles to keep on developing. They need to see Nathan Saliba get more time. Promise David get some starts in this team and start leading the line. Owen Goodman given a look at goalkeeper. There are plenty of storylines to follow, and the emergence of good young players, whether their profile continues to grow or new players coming into the fold, that's what's worthwhile following right now. It's just not about the star players. It's about the program in general. And for me, it's a really exciting position to be in coming out of this World Cup and seeing how this team transforms into an even better squad over the next 4 years.
Jordan, any thoughts?
Just quickly, you can't question these players' commitment for Canada and club, and I get that. But I think obviously if these players are healthy, meaning Jay David, Alphonso Davies specifically, got to play, got to come into camp, got to be there and show face. This whole 2027, I think that would be, for me, something that I don't love. If that's the next time that we see Alphonso Davies healthy and fit. Keep in mind, I'm not rushing back a player. If he's injured, then he's injured. But taking what this would mean, us as Canadian fans, watching Bayern Munich, watching him meet down that left-hand side for a top club in the world. And then literally for us, when it's our window, he's like, nah, I got to chill. That's a sour taste in the mouth. That's like when my mother made me drink vinegar when I swore. I would not like that. Yeah. Brutal times. You can't do that in 2026 now. That's way back in the day. Brutal times. No, but think about that, guys. Imagine that. Like you're seeing him.
No, I hear that.
If we have Bundesliga on one soccer, we're talking about him. It comes to a window in a camp and we're like, we got to rest him. We got to manage his minutes and see what his legs are like. Like, no. Jonathan David, Eustachio, Alphonso Davies, the players that we're excited to see have to play when Canada needs them. And those are friendlies for me. That is to gain momentum for the next big tournament. It's not just, come and splash as soon as we have a big important game. We've seen what happens when you have a big important game and you don't have momentum and you're not with the team. You play 15 minutes. Let's get him in. Let's get him acclimated. Let's make sure that whether he's wearing the captain's armband or not, that he's still the best player, because he is that and he showed that quality. But in the past year, we just don't know what that looks like from him.
Yeah, I think there's some arguments to be made on both sides. We could keep this conversation going for a long time, but I want to get us back on track and come back to you, Wheels, and talk about the players sort of at the club level, because Jordan mentioned guys like Nathan Saliba, Promise David on potentially moving this summer as we approach August. Is there anyone that stands out to you on that front?
I don't know if any Canadian player is in for a big move like the past, but I do think there's a lot of consequential moves that are about to play out. Jonathan David's future needs to be settled. We've documented this. Juventus support, Juventus media, the papers have all just relegated to David to being a player they don't want anymore. That's a very difficult situation to go back to. I understand if he wants to stay, improve himself, he wouldn't be the first player to prove naysayers wrong, but there's going to be a good hard look here as to what Jonathan David's future has in store. Juventus also isn't playing in the Champions League. He's on a big salary as well. So that the ability to move him might be a little bit difficult, might be easier said than done. So obviously his situation's like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when it comes to Canadian players in situations to monitor. I think Luc de Fougerolles needs a good loan away, another loan spell away. I don't think he's ready for week in, week out and everything that comes along with Premier League football. I think championship level is perfect for him. A 46 game grueling schedule to prove that you have the physical makeup to deal with all the pressures that come along with it. I think that is a significant player. And then I'm going to be monitoring Nathan Saliba as well, just because he's done well at Anderlecht. I think he's a really intriguing profile. It's still crazy to me that he didn't play in Canada's game against Morocco in the World Cup. I have no idea why that played out that way, because every time I see him play, I'm intrigued by that talent. I think he has something significant to bring to the table. So perhaps January, the end of next season, might be a better time for a move, but I just wanted to monitor to see where he's at and whether there are any suitors coming out of the World Cup.
Yeah. Okay. Before we wrap this World Cup segment, let's talk 2030, because I know we've played the comparison game between 2022 and this year. Gareth, you've been very vocal about the different groups and how that would have affected their performance. What? You being vocal, sharing your opinion? Never heard of it. Okay. Is there reason to believe that Canada will continue on this trajectory in a positive one and be better in 2030, Wheels?
Yes, of course. Just based upon the fact that I don't think that we saw a fully fit, fully prepared, fully ready Canada entering the last World Cup. Moise Bombito, obviously playing on one leg. Derek Cornelius not playing at all. Some of the options in those parts of the field in terms of the attack, Promise David not fully fit, at least not to go from the start. And you had a bunch of players out of form as well. I have faith in Canada's young players and the framework that's being established for them to be able to grow and thrive and continue to improve. And the vast majority of these Canadian players are in their prime right now, but I don't think they're completely out of it come the next World Cup. Most of them will be just around touching the age of 30, which is still a decent age range. I still think that there's area for growth in this team. And as for the manager, the pressure's on Jesse Marsh in order to get even more out of this group. How do they diversify? How do they produce a little bit more in attack? How do they improve on set pieces? These are all challenges that are very clear to anyone that's been watching this team. But I think that there is room for growth, and it's a program and a group of players that are capable of doing just that.
Jordan?
I think about it, Wheels kind of alluded to and touched on it a bit, but next World Cup, barring everyone's healthy, this will be the third World Cup for a lot of the players. Eustachio, you're looking at Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, like Ishmael Kone will be back and will be healthy, right? Like Alistair Johnston, Richie Larea. And a lot of that, the core, meaning Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, will be hitting their prime, right? So they were at a World Cup in Qatar, 22 years old. This one, 25, 26. The next one, as much as in North America, people think when you hit 30, all of a sudden you got a cane with you. Like, oh, you're old now. These guys will be established footballers, right?
Rodri's like 30, right?
I'm telling you,
at the World Cup.
They say as a man as well, like 29, 30 is your prime, but I've seen it with certain players. Like I'll go even this far. The professionals that I've known, when you're 23 and 24, coaches are like, oh, we want to make sure that you've been in the game a little bit. But when you hit 29 and 30, you've already played those 5 years, barring that you're healthy. They don't have to coach you the same way. They have to tweak what they want because you're already a pro. You know what it's like, how much sleep you got to get, where to be. This is what I love about this Canadian national team going into the next World Cup window, is that this will be their third World Cup. They're not walking around with lights and looking like, okay, what do I do where I'm here? Right. I'm having imposter syndrome. They're like, we know what it's like. We've hosted one or co-hosted one. We've been to Qatar in the trenches and we didn't really know what to do because it was our first go at it. Now they're established. So you should see the productivity from a Jonathan David. Eustachio should be leading and scoring more goals outside of the box. Like that's what you expect. A player like Promise David should start a match, should make sure that they're taking over, right? Kone. So that's what I'm looking at. I have to be optimistic and hopeful that in 4 years' time, Canada's in a better place. And that's not even to mention what we already talked about, players coming up through the programs. We're about to watch U20. In that time, these guys should already be at clubs established, knocking off 100 games. So we're in a good spot. We just have to make sure that we harness what we have and we take care of it and promote the players that are already good and make sure the ones that haven't been seen get an opportunity to be seen and tested in the right environment.
Harness what we have. It's an exciting thought, having these players with more experience, 2 to 3 World Cups under their belt. We'll get to see the Canadian men's national team back in action this fall, as we mentioned, starting September 26th.